Now, when I talk about the logic, I mean big picture stuff that hasn't changed. Like you wrote some work, you sent it to an audience, and that audience was like, hey, I want to know about the books that you cited or the journal articles or the websites that you went to. In other words, they're reading your work and they see this citation pop up and they're like, man, I want to learn more. I'm going to go to the B section of your works cited page. Oh, there it is. I can learn more. Actually go to the website and learn more. Now that hasn't changed. That's the same logic as ever. So when I say I want to talk about the logic here, I really mean the logic of documentation on the list of works cited, like how they're put together. Okay, so the thing that is new here is that MLA has this list of 9 things that you might have or might not have for a lot of the things you want to cite, whether it's a book or a journal article or a chair in a museum or a TV show you watch, whatever it is that you're citing, you're going to have some of these things. And they say, hey, put things in that order with this punctuation and everything will be fine. Now notice that only 1, 2, and 9 have periods. And it's really subtle. Do you see them kind of turning yellow? Okay, so they're saying that after 1, 2, and 9, after you list the author, bam, you put a period. Then you list the title of the source, and then bam, you put a period. And then all that other stuff, you kind of list it, and you do a comma after it, a comma, until you get to the very last thing, and you put a final period. Bam, it's that simple. So in practice, let's say I want to cite a book that I read recently. When I start filling things in with the right punctuation, right? Put the author, period, bam, the title, bam. And then I have number 7 is a comma, and then I always put a period after my last thing, even if it's number 8, not number 9. Does that make sense? I list them out in the order they say, and then I type it out on my works cited page exactly like that with that exact same punctuation. You see, in this case, I only have 1 comma because I only have one thing in between all of the others. Okay, let's look at another example. What about that website I mentioned earlier? There's this article on a website. In this case, I have the author, of course. I have the title of source, of course, periods after both. In this case, I have a container. Now, container is kind of a complicated word. I'll talk about it a little bit more later. But the simplest way to think of it is the container is where you get the smaller thing. So we all know that web articles come on websites that have other titles. We all know that we watch TV shows that the episode itself has a title, but it's part of a larger show. That larger show is the container. You might have a book that has a lot of chapters in it, and if you cite just one chapter, that's the title, number 2, but it's in a larger container, the title of the book, number 3. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about that as it goes. But for right now, you notice that I put a comma after number 3 because you always put commas after number 3. It came out on this date, comma, in this location, period. So I put it all in that order with that punctuation, and I get my list of works cited. Not that hard. Well, what about one more thing? I was reading this academic article the other day to this journal that I subscribe to, the print version. And we see the title of the article is number 2, and it's in the larger container, which is the title of the journal itself. Now this time I have number 6, a number. I didn't have that in the other ones. Great. So I'll slap that in the way I'm supposed to. Of course, I'm not covering every little detail of how you write it out these days. You can look that up yourself. This is just big picture. Now notice number 9, location, is the page number. In my last one, if I kind of back up for a second, you saw my location was a website. So the idea is, hey, you might get this stuff in the location of a website, or you might find that article in the location of a page. Those are parallel entries here. The main thing, of course, right now is the punctuation. I put it in order. You see my periods go exactly where they should be, and then I have comma, 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 comma before the final period. Okay, logically, this makes a lot of sense for most things, but I know what you're thinking. You're like, wait, you read that journal article in print, you didn't find it on a website where everyone else finds it? Or you're like, you read that book, that is so 1998. What I do is I read it on the Kindle reader, perhaps on my computer or book, or you know, there's like electronic stuff. Or we haven't talked much about TV shows, but what if I like pull out my Lost DVDs because it's the best TV show of all time, and you're like, ha ha ha, you watch the DVDs because I go to Netflix. Well, MLA is flexible enough, especially these days, to take that into account. It just takes a little bit of getting to know. Quick warning, you have to remember that there is often more than one correct way to document a source. And you're like, well, you could say that. No, it's not just me. The MLA handbook itself says that. That's real emphasis of edition 8, is that things change and things can be flexible. So, I mean, it's right there in the book. That's how I would cite it. So keep that in mind as we go forward. Okay, so we've got our list of 9 things, right? Well, if we're doing some of this complicated digital stuff, we have to think of it this way. You have the same stuff as before: author, title, source, period, bam, period, bam. And then we have that first container, which has comma, comma, comma. It ends with a period. And then what if that container is like inside another container? Well, that's what we're going to walk through. Now, notice really quickly the punctuation again. There's only 4 periods here max. that the period in the middle after number 9 location of the first container is essentially saying, hey, we're done with the first container here. Now let's move into where you found or where you accessed that. Okay, in practice, it's not as complicated as it sounds. Remember that book I was talking about earlier? I have the author, title, of source. I'm just putting it over there because I don't have room. Same content as before. There's the publisher, there's the publication date, period, bam. Well, what if I was looking at it in the Kindle Cloud Reader? Well, that's my second container. That's the place I accessed that book. The location was at that location there. So in my actual citation, it's as simple as that. I have the exact same citation as before. That's that first line. And then I end it with a period, same as before, but I add on the content for my second container, ending that with a period. Again, like I said, 4 periods max here, right? Bam, 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 bam. Let's do another one. What about that academic journal article? There's my author, there's my title. I have the exact same stuff as before, but now what if I got that on a website? The article is in the container of the journal, and that journal is in the container of this website called Conference on College Composition. I know it's a lot of words, but it's true in this case. I got that in this place. Do you see a theme here that my second container, in most practical cases, not always, but often will only have a title and a location because it's a digital thing. So I get this massive looking works cited entry, but the first part is exactly the same, and that second part in red is the only new part here.